Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Kavita Chauhan. I teach in Philosophy Department, University of Hyderabad. Today's module is Cognition of Art in Abhinavagupta's Abhinavabharti. This module discusses two concepts. One is what is aesthetic experience, and second, what is cognition of art, or we can say the cognitive conditions of art. I have chosen to discuss this concept according to Abhinavagupta. Abhinavagupta wrote a unique commentary, Abhinavagupta wrote a unique and original commentary on Bharat's Natya Shastra. So Abhinavabharti is a commentary on Bharat's Natya Shastra. In this commentary, Abhinavagupta concentrates on the nature of aesthetic experience and as well what makes possible the aesthetic experience. When we talk about what makes possible aesthetic experience, then we discuss the cognitive conditions of art. So this module explores Abhinavagupta's concept of cognition of art. We visit a museum, art gallery, musical concert, theatre and so on with the hope that these places will give us solace from the boredom of everyday life. This is because there is something special in the cognition of art which is not found in ordinary cognition of things around us. What then is special in the cognition of art and how it is different from ordinary cognition? So art experience is certainly different from ordinary experience, as we see in our ordinary life that whenever we try to escape from boredom, we rush towards museums, cinema halls or any musical concerts with the hope that these art forms would give us solace from our ordinary life. So this makes very clear that there is difference between ordinary life and artistic expressions. So what is special in the artistic expression or the cognition of that artistic expression? There are two aspects of the cognition of art. First, art experience is possible only when the appreciator experiences an art object. It is a direct experience. Second, the cognition of art cannot be considered as right or wrong cognition. It is beyond truth and falsity. The uniqueness of the cognition of art is that it leads to pleasurable experience. So there are two aspects of the cognition of art. One, there should be the presence of art object and as well as the experiencer. We cannot talk about cognition of art in the absence of the presence of art object. So cognition of art is an experience or is an entity which takes place between the art object and the art experiencer. And second aspect or the condition of the cognition of art is that it cannot be considered as right or wrong or true or false cognition. As we can talk about ordinary cognition, it is either true or false or right and wrong, which is not the case of art cognition. Art cognition is always is a pleasurable experience. We always talk about that art experience is pleasurable or non-pleasurable. We never say that art experience is true or false. Abhinavagupta explores this idea of pleasurable experience during art experience, and he makes a distinction between ordinary experience and aesthetic experience, or we can say between lokik anubhav and alokik anubhav. Art experience for Abhinavagupta is alokik anubhav. So keeping in mind the enjoyability aspect of art, we will see how the cognition of art lies in transcendental or extraordinary bliss. since he has made a distinction between ordinary experience and extraordinary experience, and ordinary experience is the direct contact of the sense organs with the object, whereas an extraordinary experience is a relationship between the art object and the experiencer, which he calls rasa anubhav or rasa experience. Let us discuss what is rasa experience according to Abhinavagupta and what are the conditions for aesthetic experience or rasa experience. For Abhinavagupta, rasa experience is that which provides the most adequate explanation of artistic cognition in terms of aesthetic pleasure. So, for Abhinavagupta, aesthetic experience is always pleasurable. And what makes it pleasurable? The conditions he talk about, and according to him, a responsive reader or sahrida have been endowed with certain innate vasanas or instincts, which are called sthayi bhavs, with the vivid representation of the vibhavs, anubhavs and vibhichari bhavs. This vasana or instinct is realized in a universal form, which is accompanied by thrill and joy. Rasa experience for Abhinavagupta is the outcome of the combination of vibhavs, anubhavs and vibhichari bhavs, as this is the interpretation of Bharat as well. But Abhinavagupta adds further, he says that it's aesthetic experience is not merely the combination of vibhavs, anubhavs and vibhichari bhavs, rather these are the sthayi bhavs or the basic instincts which we enjoy during art experience. When these sthayi bhavs are realized in their universal form, that is called sthayi bhav. But it is not merely realizing sthayi bhavs in their universal or general form, rather generalized by vibhavs, anubhavs and vibhichari bhavs, that is called aesthetic experience or rasa experience. Sthayi bhavs themselves are not enjoyed unless they are roused by vibhavs etc. in their universalized form and become the object of experience. So sthayi bhavs when generalized with the combination of vibhavs etc. is enjoyed by the sahrida or the experiencer. Only then it is called rasa experience or aesthetic experience. For example, the ordinary causes like garden, glances etc. when depicted on stage transcend the plane of empirical causality. Hence, when vibhavs etc. attain a unity in the minds of the spectator, they create the state of relish which is extraordinary in character. Now let's see what Abhinavagupta means by generalization or universalization of vibhavs etc. For example, we see two lovers in real life, and that will not cause aesthetic experience in us. Whereas when we see two lovers on stage, or to say two actors on stage, those two actors create or give rise to aesthetic experience in the spectators, because as a spectator we do not merely see two actors on stage, but we see two characters. We are not able to distinguish between the actors and characters. Also, we cannot say the characters are in particular time and space. So we see them as the universalized or generalized time and space. In this sense, Abhinavagupta talks about extraordinary nature of aesthetic experience or extra-worldly character of aesthetic experience. Abhinavagupta further give reasons why aesthetic experience is not ordinary. The determinants etc. are not material causes, karak hetus of the production of ras. Otherwise, ras would arise even in the absence of their cognition. Effect may continue in the absence of cause. So Abhinavagupta says that determinants or vibhavs etc. are the causes of rasa experience, but these vibhavs are not the causes, just like karak hetus. A karak hetu is the relationship of the cause and effect. For example, milk is the cause of curd. So when we have the effect, for example curd, we do not have milk with us, which is not the case of vibhavs etc. We are not talking of vibhavs etc. as the karak hetus. If vibhavs etc. are the causes of cognition, gyapti, they would have to be included among the means of knowledge, praman, but this is not possible since ras is not an objective thing, siddh, which could function as knowledge object. The object of knowledge, prameya like ghat, exists independent of cognition, which is not true of ras experience. Also, vibhavs etc. are not the causes of cognition, just like a praman. When we talk about pramans, pramans are always the source of knowledge. When we talk about any piece of knowledge, we always make a claim that this is perceptual cognition or inferential cognition or verbal testimony, or this cognition is a result of verbal testimony. This is not the case of vibhavs or determinants etc. Because vibhavs etc. do not reveal any piece of knowledge. So vibhavs etc. cannot be called the karak hetus or the gyapya hetus. Rasa experience is a continuous process of tasting of rasa, unlike the object of cognition. So we can say that aesthetic experience is a continuous process. It is not merely the process of cognition. Like we cannot talk in terms of perception, inference or verbal testimony. We always talk about that it is a state of mind which is in a continuous process. So aesthetic experience for Abhinavagupta is not of the following types. It is not the ordinary cognition. Aesthetic experience cannot be equated with the right cognition, since right cognition is defined as that which reveals the attributes possessed by the object. Erroneous. It cannot be wrong cognition as well, since wrong cognition is that which reveals attributes not possessed by the object. For example, knowledge of silver in a conch shell. Indescribable. Furthermore, it is not the case that aesthetic experience is indescribable. So for Abhinavagupta, aesthetic experience is neither right cognition, wrong cognition or indescribable. Since we can talk about aesthetic experience and we try to define aesthetic experience, and Abhinavagupta has also defined aesthetic experience, so cannot be said that aesthetic experience or rasanubhuti is indescribable. Also, aesthetic experience is neither like right cognition, perceiving a chair as chair, and also not wrong cognition, perceiving a chair as a table. So aesthetic experience is different from right cognition, wrong cognition and indescribable. Sri Shankuk, a predecessor of Abhinavagupta, has already established at great length in his discussion that aesthetic experience does not come under any doubtful or false cognitive category. According to him, it is a different kind of cognition. It is neither like the actor himself is happy, nor Ram is happy, nor is this Ram or not, nor this is similar to Ram. Instead of these four kinds of cognitions, namely samyak, valid, mithya, error, sanshya, doubt and sadrishya, similarity, rasa experience is like observing a horse in a picture, chitra turg naya. For Sri Shankuk, aesthetic experience cannot be called that it is samyak. Samyak is valid, nor it is mithya or error, or sanshya, doubt and sadrishya, similarity. As when we talk about cognitive experiences, in epistemology, we see that there are 4 types of experiences. Either the cognition is valid or erroneous or doubtful and can be of similarity. Like in Upman, it has been already established. So rasa experience is different from all these 4 types of cognitions. It is like Chitraturganaya. Chitraturganaya is the painting of a horse. When we perceive the painting of a horse, we do not say that it is a horse, since that's not a real horse. Also, we do not say that it is not a horse, since that is a painting of a horse. So aesthetic experience is a mixture of real and unreal. We cannot even say that it is unreal. Also, we cannot say that that's real. Now let us discuss what is the process of aesthetic cognition or the process of contemplation. For Abhinavagupta, the aesthetic contemplation is mental perception, manas pratyaksh. Aesthetic experience is a direct experience of the mind, or it is perceived through the inner mental faculty, mansi sakshatkarmik. Abhinavagupta explains the process of aesthetic cognition in terms of mansi pratyaksha. He says that aesthetic experience cannot fall into the category of direct cognition like pratyaksha, but it falls in the category of mansi pratyaksha. So aesthetic experience is the experience of inner mental faculties. By saying that aesthetic experience is the experience of inner mental faculty, Abhinavagupta means that that an experiencer or sahridaya participates with the art object with the inner mental faculty, not merely with the cognitive faculties. Like, it's not merely the contact of the sense organs with the object. Such a perception is self-knowing, swasamvedana siddha. In order to have aesthetic experience, the mind should be calm and concentrated, just as tasting of good food requires mental absorption in the food, tasted to the exclusion of all else. In the process of contemplation, Abhinavagupta gives the example of tasting of food. He says that while eating food, if mind is diverted here and there, one cannot experience the taste of food. In order to experience the taste of food, mind must be calm and at rest and with the tasting of food. Only then we can have taste of food. Similarly, aesthetic experience is like charvana or tasting of rasa. In that process, mind must be calm and concentrated. It is an experience of the present moment which does not extend into past or future, which is why it is a highly concentrated and intense experience. Abhinavagupta further explains the process of contemplation by saying that it is the experience of present moment. Aesthetic experience always takes place in the present moment. It is never in memory, or it cannot take place in future. For example, when we talk about aesthetic experience, we cannot say that I am having aesthetic experience in my memory, or in future I'll have aesthetic experience. Then that's verbal articulation that cannot be called aesthetic experience. In order to have aesthetic experience, one should be able to experience in the present moment. There should be an art object in that moment, and the individual must be able to experience that art object. Hence, during aesthetic experience, the mind, which is the organ of tasting rasa, needs to be free from all obstacles. Such a state of mind is called samvid vishranti. Hence, for Abhinavagupta, mind is the sense organ for experiencing an art object. Since mind is the organ for experience, so mind should be calm and concentrated, and should be avoid of or devoid of obstacles. Abhinavagupta has talked about various obstacles. If those are there, an individual cannot have ascetic experience. The experience which is devoid of all sorts of hindrances and obstacles, mind would be at rest and would be having ascetic experience. This state of rest is known as Samvid Vishranti. Samvid Vishranti is a state of mind in which mind is at complete rest. This term Samvid Vishranti has metaphysical implications. In Kashmir Shaivism, Samvid Vishranti has been defined extensively. Since Abhinavagupta is a Kashmir Shaivite thinker, it is important to know, it is important to understand the concept of Samvid Vishranti. The basis of Samvid Vishranti can be traced back to the metaphysics of Kashmir Shaivism. The objective world is a manifestation of the absolute will. This will, however, is nothing but the Vimarsh or Prakash. Vimarsh is characterized by freedom. Swatantra is the perfect independence from anything external to it. It is a freedom to manifest which lie potentially within it, or to bring back to a state of potentiality which has been actually manifested. This freedom is the essential nature of the absolute. So Samvid Vishranti is a state of absolute, and absolute is explained in Kashmir Shaivism as Prakash and Vimarsh. Prakash and Vimarsh are the concepts of the manifestation of universe. The absolute or Shiva manifests itself what it is potential of. The process of manifestation is known as Swatantra Shakti. So every individual is the manifestation of that absolute. If this is the case, then why individuals do not realize their complete self? So Kashmir Shaivism explains that we do not realize our own real consciousness is because of malas. Malas or impurities are the coverings in the realization of truths. Mala is ignorance that doesn't allow knowledge to function. Mala is the covering or the hindrance or the obstacle in the realization of one's true self. As Abhinavagupta has talked about, ascetic experience takes place only when the mind is devoid of obstacles. Similarly, we see that in the metaphysics of Kashmir Shaivism, an individual realizes one's complete self only when one is devoid of coverings or malas. So these malas are known as ignorance or the hindrances. There are three types of malas. These are Karammal, Mayyamal and Anavmal. Karammal is the impurity which makes an individual to realize that I am lucky, I am unlucky, I am happy or I am unhappy. And Mayyamal is that which creates duality, that I and others are different. For example, this is mine, that is not mine, he is my friend and that man is my enemy. And Anavmal is that due to this mal, the individual thinks herself as incomplete. So according to these three malas, Karamal, Mayyamal and Anavmal, an individual thinks that one is an individual, is not the universal self. Also the individual thinks that one is happy or unhappy, whereas an individual is the complete self, and that complete self is always remains in a blissful state, cannot experience unhappiness, and also an individual tries to become complete or moves outwardly thinking that one has to gain more and more to become complete. So Anavmal is that which makes which makes an individual to realize that one is incomplete, whereas an individual is complete. So, when the individual gets rid of these mullahs, the individual I becomes completely absorbed in Shiva. When an individual gets rid of these three mullahs or three limitations, or we can say these three impurities, so the individual would realize that one is the complete self, one is not limited, one is not lied to construction and destruction. Similarly, apprehension of rasa without obstacle is always pleasurable. It is a state that consists in the tasting of one's own consciousness. This tasting is endowed with supernatural bliss or alokik alhad. For Abhinavagupta, aesthetic experience is always pleasurable when it is devoid of obstacles, just as the individual I is always complete in the absence of mullahs. It is because of the presence of impurities or ignorance that an individual is in pain or in suffering. Without when an individual gets rid of these ignorances, one realizes the complete bliss. Similarly, in aesthetic, while having aesthetic experience, if there are certain hurdles and obstacles, one cannot have aesthetic experience, and that cognition would always be at the extraordinary level, not of the ordinary experience, and that extraordinary experience is taken place only when mind or manas is calm and at rest. Hence, the cognition of art is not ordinary, rather extraordinary. So, in the end, it can be said that aesthetic experience is not ordinary experience, since there are no ordinary conditions in having aesthetic experience. All the conditions for having aesthetic experience are extraordinary in nature, and these extraordinary conditions are vibhavs, etc. Vibhavs are not ordinary, vibhavs are extraordinary, and that's why the cognitive conditions are extraordinary conditions, not the ordinary conditions for having aesthetic experience. With this, thank you so much.